Hi everyone, it's Karen and I'm back with another design team project for AngeldreamCraftsKim on Etsy. And this time I have put together these really cute little notebooks with fancy covers, and they're built onto a hardcover of an old book, and then I'll finish it off with pretty digital papers and then fabrics and laces and doilies from AngeldreamCraftsKim. And I will leave links to her shop in the description box below, and also to her talented designers. So I just showed you that first one that I made, and I'll come back and show it to you in more detail, but I want to go through the steps of actually how to put these together. This isn't my idea. I've seen it on YouTube. I've had it in my list of things that I wanted to do, and so now is the time that I'm putting it all together. So the hardcover book is, I've got some digital papers printed out, and I've got them shaped and all ready to go on this hardcover book. I'm sure you all know about covering a book or heavy piece of cardboard. I just found this is a great project to use the hardcovers. Sometimes we've used the book pages from our books and we haven't used the hardcovers. And this was an old music book, and it was very badly damaged. And so I took off the one cover side on it right down to the cardboard so that I could have a clean surface to work on. And then I just copied out my digital papers, and they weren't quite big enough for the cover, so I did an extra little piece to fit over the top. You're not going to see that join at the top there anyway, just because of the design and the way that I put them together. So better to have it all nicely covered, cleanly covered. And I have enough to fold over to the back side and at the top. I'm not worried about the bottom because, again, I have just enough paper at the bottom to fold up, and that's all I need. And I will be gluing this all together, and I will be back to do the next step. So by the magic of editing, of course, here I am. I've got that all glued down nicely, and I've left it to dry. So it's the glue is hardened, and it's a nice clean surface to work on. Papers aren't shifting. There's no bubbles or anything. And basically, I glued it with in the same way that I'm going to glue on the back side, which I'm going to show you. It just, when you're gluing there, you can show that you can see that I just cut it in a bit so that it was shaped at the top. And it's just like wrapping a present. Just go about it the same way. Now, for this type of gluing, I use the Aleene's Quick Dry Tacky Glue, just because it's cheaper than the other glues that are out there. It's basically a PVA type glue. You can use any kind of glue for this. Even an Elmer's glue is fine. You want to get a good coating on there, and then I always spread mine with a paintbrush of some kind. It really doesn't matter what kind you use. I just happen to have one of these little brushes that I use, and I use it just exclusively for gluing. And I just like to spread the glue all the way to the edges, make a nice thin layer of glue. You can even use Mod Podge to do this. You just want your glue nicely spread out, so that really helps eliminate the bubbles and, you know, the mess that a lot of glue can make, oozing out the sides and all that stuff. So this is a little tip that I just have for you, and this is the same thing I did for the front, for the other side of this book that I covered. Just wiping up a bit of glue there. Don't want to get that on the other side of my book. And then I'm going to glue this page down. And just make sure that when you're gluing this down, because this is going to be your back cover, you want, if you've got a directional print, and I have the roses are going and I want them to be going up, then make sure you check to see which is your top and which is your bottom, because you don't want to glue it on upside down. And believe me, I'm telling you that because I've done that. So, you know, it happens. And then I've got a brayer, and I'm just giving that a really good roll so that any air bubbles are coming out. And as you can see, no extra glue comes out at all. That just spreading it with the paintbrush just makes it such a clean and nicer process, and you get such a nice clean finish. And then you're ready to go for your next step of this process to make this little hard part of this book into a really nice little notepad. So I want to use this doily for part of the top. This is a doily that Kim sent me, oh wow, probably more than a year ago, and I've had it in my stash. Just didn't have the right project for it, but this is the right one. So I've cut it on the diagonal there, and I'm going to use a piece of it at the top here. And then I'm going to use the other half of it to make a pocket on the back of this little notebook that I'm creating. And so you'll see that as we continue on. And so I'm just playing here a little bit with placement of the doily and how I'm going to do that. The page that I have copied there is another digital copy of the same one that I put on the back of the book, or the back of the notepad, which is your hardcover at the back. I really liked that particular digital, and it went really well with these pretty fabrics that I have that Kim had sent in one of my DT packages. And one thing I just absolutely love is that Kim is carrying fabrics in her shop, and she gets some of the most prettiest fabrics. And so this is the one that I chose for this one, and then I used a different fabric from her shop on the other one that I'm going to show you in detail later. So I want to ruffle this up, and I don't ruffle usually on my machine. I usually hand ruffle it. I sometimes hand stitch it. Other times I just glue it. This time I'm going to iron this, which I will go away and do, because when it's a skinny piece like this and you've torn it, the edges want to roll under, and I really find that difficult when you're trying to ruffle it. So I will flatten this out with the iron, get it all nice and flat, and then I will ruffle that to go at the top. I'll go a little bit into detail about how I do the ruffling after I iron it. And so now I'm just using this really pretty lace from Kim's shop in this gorgeous color. I don't even know how to explain this color. It's kind of a taupey beige color, and it's just rich and really pretty, and it's got these hearts on it and what almost looks like butterfly wings at the bottom and the flowers. It's just gorgeous. And so I want that for the bottom, but I want some of this fabric as well. So I like ripping the fabric because I like fraying it out. I like the frayed look. I think that it looks really pretty. And so I'm going to fray the edges of this out and get it ready to be a topper on the top of that lace that I'm putting at the bottom. So on the other one, I did the same thing. I actually used 2 laces from Kim's shop and a piece of fabric to build like a little piece that I put at the bottom. And I like doing that. I like taking the laces and fabrics and putting them together to make like a whole new trim piece. Something that looks like it's all joined together and is one piece, not separate pieces. And I'm just looking at the bottom of the page here, and I see that my printer did not print borderless, so I'm just going to cut that white piece off of the bottom there. And so I'm back, and I am finishing laying out those laces, and gonna do the ruffle at the top, which I think I already mentioned. And I do a lot of playing with the laces and the trims, trying to get the look that I want. Sometimes I lay it out and I walk away, which is what I did, and I come back and look at it, because often something that I wasn't sure of, I'll be like, oh, I love that, or I'll decide that I don't really like something and I will change it up. So I'm just going to show you here how I ruffle this piece. As you saw in the previous, I was ruffling it along the top, but it was going to be too short. So I use a ruler is handy to use, and I know I need the length, the 6 inches. So I'm going to re-ruffle it. I usually try and have about double, so I have a little over double the length. And then you need to just ruffle it along whatever you're measuring it against, so that you end up with the length you want. And I knew before when I ruffled it that I had my ruffles too close together. So I'm just putting them a little farther apart, and I'm just doing a little bit of a finger press on them. And with this blend of fabric, it's a cotton or a cotton blend of some kind, it finger presses really well. So those little marks will stay visible. And then later I'll either hand stitch it or I will glue it in place. At the moment, not even sure which way I'm going to go, but I'll be sure to show you all that once I'm ready to attach that. So I had sent my husband out to get me another one of the notepads that I use, and he arrived back. So I'm going to skip ahead now. I will go back to the decorating part, and I'm going to put the holes in and put the little writing pad onto our little board that we have created. Because he has just returned from the dollar store with my little notepad. So I used 2 brads. You need the brads to be about 1¼ inches long at least, so that they can come up from the back through the board and through the number of papers that you're going to add. Now you can add a notepad like I do, or you can add your own papers as well to this. This is totally up to you how you want to do it. So as I said, I use an awl, and I've used my ruler and I've decided where about I want the holes. So I'm going to evenly place them from the edge and make a hole with the awl and just press straight down and into that foam back that I have on there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I use 2 awls. I have 2, one really skinny, sharp one, like what you see there. Well, they're both sharp. And the other one is a bit wider around in diameter. So once I've poked the holes through with the skinnier one, I will re-poke them through with the bigger one too, once I get to that point with when I want to put the brads in, because generally the brads need a slightly bigger hole to get them through. Now you could also sew this on too. You could easily do just, come up and sew it in place and have a little bow in the front. There's the back of the other one, how I finished it. You can see that you don't see any of the paper at the back. I end up covering it with some of the fabric that matches, and I'll do the same with this one. So there's this little topper piece that has to go on in order to give you a nice cover over the top. And so I'm just trimming it into place here. And I don't measure. I find that if I measure and I go to put it on, I'll always either need some cut off or it's too short. So I prefer to not use any measurements and just place my paper in place and hold it tightly and cut. I find I get a much better cut that way. But to each their own, because you have to do what works for you. Now here are the holes, and here I'm just using that small awl again I'm showing you, and here's the bigger one. You can see the diameter of it is bigger, and when you poke it in, it pokes the holes bigger, which will make a big difference in getting those brads through on the back. Now if you were just sewing this pad in place or your papers, then you wouldn't need the bigger hole, because the needle of course goes through. Here's the writing tablet that my husband ran and got for me from the dollar store. 200 sheets. I only use half of it, and it's a little bit too long, and I end up cutting 2 rows of the lines off the bottom in order to fit on here, which is nothing. I just did that on my paper cutter, and I didn't show you that. So they're easy enough. That's why it fits, because I just cut 2 rows off, which was easy to do. Anybody can do that. So they do fit really nicely. On this particular book, of course, it was the perfect fit. And I'm just going to mark the holes, of course. So that's really easy to do, because if you line it up and you just press a little bit with your awl through the holes that you've already made in your back, the border for the back, then you easily get a marking. Now I'll flip that over and I'll get my foam again and flip that over, and there's my marks, perfect marks. Get it all lined up nice and straight, and down we go with your awl. I just find that the awl is so easy to work with. It goes through a pile of papers. It's about 100 papers I'm using, and it goes through them really easily. If I, try and use a hole punch or any of these other fancy devices, it takes longer. So this is way easier, and awls are really cheap too. So really easy to have them in your craft tools. And if you like to do any kind of bookmaking, notepads or anything like this, it's really nice to have a couple of them. So here are the brads, and they fit through those holes on the back. And they are quite long. Like I said, they have to be about 1¼ inches. Now, they probably could be 1 inch, because they're probably 1/4 inch too long, but you definitely need them longer than shorter, because otherwise you won't be able to put very many pages onto your little backboard that you've made for your notebook. So now we put your stack of papers, and this could, like I said, this could be just a bunch of papers that you've collected together. Could be a variety of things, music paper and vintage papers and whatever you like to put in your little notebook. I decided to make these really functional, and so I'm putting notepad paper on them. Someone could easily use this as a journal and write every day on the pages, or you could use it for doing lists. You could use it for doing, just writing down, you know, your plans for a trip that you've got coming up, it's very useful with the lined paper. And so I have the little piece that I want to put over the top that I've measured before and showed it to you, and I have it all cut, and now I just need to add the holes. So line it up, and I just, again, I'm eyeballing. If you like to measure, please, by all means, get out your measuring tools and measure. I don't find that useful for me. I find that if I'm standing while I do this, and if I stand right above it, I get a nice, perfect eyeballing. So again, you do what works for you, but you need to make a hole. That's the bottom line. So however you like to do that, and if you'd like to use a hole punch, by all means do that too. Now fold it over the top. Now you make yourself like a little spine there. So you have a little spine that covers over the top of your papers and your little backboard, and then it comes down the back. And of course that's too long, but I always would rather cut things off after. And so I fold down the legs on my brad, and I will tidy up the back and shorten that off. And I'm just putting, I never can, you know, you can never help going to the next step, and I was just dying to see what that looked like. But you know, when I put the doily on top of there, I didn't like how the legs stuck out of the doily. They actually came out through the holes. So I took the top, I decided to make a little change here. So I'm going to show you, because I could have edited this out, but you know, you might find the same thing when you do it with yours. So I decided to take the little wrapper, the piece I wrap around the top, I took it off, and I pushed the legs down, and I'm going to cover over the brads now. And yes, I could have cut another piece of paper and wasted another piece of paper because of the holes in there, but no one's going to see those holes because the doily is going to go over top. So I just used it. And I used my hot glue because it's fast, and it's good for when I'm working on camera. And yes, wet glue will work just as well. And so I press that all down in place, and I don't use a lot of hot glue so I don't get bumpiness underneath the paper. I know I've heard some people say that, but I never get that. And I know it's depends on how much glue you put on. Just remember, when you put hot glue on metal, it does make it a little bit on the hot side, so don't burn yourself on the brads. And then you can see here, I just cut this off, and again, just I look at it and I cut it. And then that is my perfect little wrap right over the top, covering up the legs on the brads. It is a little bit wide, so and that's what I do. I just, as I go, if I find things are not fitting properly, I would rather trim it as I go than trim it ahead of time and measure, and then it's too short or too long anyway. Too long is always great. You can always trim it off, but when it's too short, that's when it's a pain, because you got to start all remaking it again. So that's all done, and the back, same thing. I'm going to glue that down. I didn't make these so that you could replace the writing pad inside. You could do that, and you know, you could do a process where you could have it so that you can still get at the brad legs and take the old notepad off and put a new one on. I didn't make them like that. I made it like something that would have, same as any kind of a journal, eventually it's going to get full, and then that would be fine. And then I glued, now I have a nice clean surface, as you can see, to glue that doily on, and I'm happy with that. The brad legs aren't sticking out, and that makes me happier. There's just some things, I don't know, like for some people, they would put that doily on and it would cover, and if it was a heavier doily, I probably wouldn't have noticed it at all. Like I think the first one I made it with the brad legs on top, and it didn't stick out. But on this one, they stuck out, and I could see them, and I just didn't like it. So I'm just completing that ruffle now, and I'm showing you that I decided to glue it. So on each little pleat, I put a tiny little dab of glue, and then I fold it up exactly how I had it before. And then there's one more there, one little pleat, and again, a little dab of glue, and then I fold it up. And there'll be more glue goes on the back when it's glued down, but that is all the gluing I do to make the little ruffle. And it'll have some, like you'll be able to stretch it a bit, so you have to be careful when you put it down, because you don't want to stretch it wider, too much wider than what you wanted. But fits perfectly. And then I decided I wanted a little bow on there as well. Not sure where, but I just grabbed some little bit of fabric and got it ready to make a little bow to go on there as well. So I'm going to attach the dangle trim, and this is such a pretty dangle trim that Kim carries in the store. I hope she's had it a couple of times, and I hope she gets more of it. I think she had it in a cream and then the white, and it's such a pretty trim. And on one of my projects, I actually cut each of the pieces individually and used them on a project more like petals and leaves, and they really looked really nice. So as you saw there, I just added the glue to the top of the dangle trim, and again I'm barely squeeze on the end of my on the handle of my glue gun, and just a tiny bit of glue. And then on the back I just put a little bit of glue in between the pleated areas, and then I put that down. And I usually just end up adding a bit of glue maybe to the ends at once I'm done. But you can see there, just making sure my pleats I'm not pulling them apart as I glue it down. And then I think I will trim off the ends, and my red scissor in my craft room is my fabric scissor, and it's what I always use to do trimming because it trims everything so nice and neat. And I do this on a bit of an angle because I want to keep that little bit of that flowery ruffle detail on the bottom of the doily there. And it's always best to use your good scissors when you're doing this. And I find a red-handled pair, although they kind of in your face a bit on the video, I think anyway, but they just stand out on my desk, and I don't dare grab them when I'm doing paper. Now I'm going to build that piece that I wanted to build on the bottom. So I've got the lace cut, and I've got the fabric ready, and it's frayed out, and I'm just going to put it together. So I just take it off to the side, and I will put a piece of a glue mat underneath it, and I will just attach it right to the top of the lace. And I don't know, I started doing this a while ago with my projects, actually building some of it away from the main project. I think partly sometimes I do it because it allows me to just focus on a smaller thing at a time. If I'm doing 2 or 3 of these, I can do little bits like this, and you sometimes don't get so overwhelmed with the big project because you're just working on a small area. And also, I don't know, I just find that maybe I can create more when I'm concentrating on a smaller area. So it might be something you might want to try if you find a big project overwhelming. So just gonna add it there in place, and again I'm just following the line of the top of the lace there and putting a line of hot glue, and down she goes in place. And I really like how that turned out. I think it's really pretty, and I like the fabric at the top of the notepad and at the bottom. Here I'm just fraying out the edges. They're hanging out over the edges a little bit farther than I want, and if you just take your scissor and cut that off, you're going to lose your frayed out piece. So you have to fray it out first, and I just use I have a little fancy pin there that I'm using, but I just pull out the threads with the needle and then get it to where it's right up against the side of the notepad. And then what I'm trimming off is a little bit of the part I've already frayed out. But what you end up with is a frayed edge, not a flat edge. And I just do the same on both sides. The measurement on that was what it was, and so I fixed it. And there's the bottom. And I have one of these little flowers, and Kim had these little flowers in a couple of different sizes in the shop. She had the bigger ones too. And again, these are, going through my stash and using what I have. And so I add the little flower there and one of Kim's pretty heart centers with the rhinestones all around it. It had a little loop on the top. It could be a charm. And I just cut that piece off so that I don't have the loop on it, and I make it into a piece that I can use as for the flower center. I mean, you can leave them on too. I just prefer to cut it off. Now I'm on the back, and I'm going to create that pocket that I had mentioned with the other piece of the doily. And so there it is there, and it's going to make a perfect pocket on the back. I just think for these little notepads, sometimes it's really nice to have an extra pocket and you could add one on the inside as well if you wanted to on the back cover, but I decided to add it to the back so that if you had something that you needed to tuck away, you could do that. You could even tuck your pen back there in that pocket, and then it would always be handy when you were ready to write in it. And again, I wanted to use a little overlay of the fabric on the top of that pocket to tie it all together. And by the magic of editing, there was really no more to show you there. I finished off the pocket and I'm showing you the finished. I took it and added some details, of course, and this happened over a period of days, and I wasn't going to turn the camera on every time I did that. Your details are all your own. It's what you have in your stash or what you can afford to buy. I love buying the trims from Kim's shop, the bridal trims that have the sequins on them like you see here, because I can cut them all apart and you can add them onto your projects, and they add a little bit of sparkle, and there's nothing that looks prettier, I think. You can see the pad of paper in there, and I added another little charm in the front, added more of that sparkly trim in the back. Kim had lots of that in the shop before in pink, I think in this color or cream, and so it's really nice trim to buy because you can cut it up into these little pieces. And then I just added that in one of my little coffee filter pockets in the back. And then here's the first one I made, and I used another fabric from Kim's shop and a little bow, rhinestone bow. She has some of the most beautiful bling in her shop, and I'm sure she'll be restocking that. And then the little white dangly bits are part of a dangle, and then there's the doily. And then here's the bottom piece that I created with the fabric and a skinny little piece of lace, and then one of her pretty laces with the polka dots. And I added the three together at the bottom with the pink rose fabric at the top, and then added some of my own flat back pearls, and then the little flower again on the side, and there's the pads of paper inside all ready to be written on, and there's a little button in the middle of the flower on that one. That's just from my stash. Top is finished it off at the top, and a lace pocket on this one built with the fabric, and then a little piece of that lace on the top like that. That's what makes a perfect little pocket. You can use fabric, lace for your pockets, whatever you have. You can even use paper if you want to put a paper pocket on the back and then trim it with a bit of lace. These turn out so pretty, and to me they're so functional, and they would make such a beautiful gift to give to anyone. And also to sell. I think that they would sell really well at a craft fair. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you got something out of the tutorial. And I appreciate you all so much for stopping by and spending some time with me. And give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. I love hearing from you. And I will talk to y'all soon. Bye for now.